President Muhammadu Buhari says the rule of law must be subject to the supremacy of the nation's security and national interest. He was speaking at the 58th Annual General Conference of the Nigeria Bar Association, where he tasked the lawyers to contribute to the enhancement of the nation's business environment and social justice by promoting respect for the rule of law.
Our willingness to hold persons accountable for offenses against society through the judicial process will equally transform the future of public service in Nigeria in a positive manner. I believe that lawyers can contribute to another core objective of enhancing our business environment and promoting social justice by promoting respect for the rule of law, contributing to the law reform process, and putting national interest and professional ethics above self in the conduct of their business. Rule of law must be subject to the supremacy of the nation's security and the national interest. Our apex court has had calls to adopt a position on this issue in this regard, and it is now a matter of judicial recognition that where national security and public interests are threatened, or there is a likelihood of their being threatened, the individual rights of those allegedly responsible must take second place in favor of the greater good of society.
Also speaking at the NBA conference, President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana has appealed to African leaders to improve the quality of life of the people and strengthen democratic institutions for the preservation of democracy in Africa.
The biggest challenge that we face on the continent today is widespread poverty. And until we eradicate it, Ghana, Nigeria, and indeed Africa cannot really join the International Committee of Nations on an equal basis. We have a great battle to fight and win, and that is the battle to provide our people with a good quality of life. I have no hesitation whatsoever in recommending that all African countries adopt a policy of free compulsory education from kindergarten to senior high school. I'm an unabashed believer in business and the work of the private sector. But I believe there's money to be made in the private sector, and that is where it should be made. Unfortunately, many of our citizens now see the state as the main source of making money.
The Independent National Electoral Commission is making plans to forestall any plans to buy votes at the polling unit during the 2019 general election. The chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, was speaking when he met the Interagency Consultative Committee on 2019 general election security.
I want to flag this challenge very early, and that is this phenomenon of vote buying at polling units. We must never allow this to thrive, because our democracy must never be on sale to the highest bidder. It is the will of Nigerians that should determine who wins at every level of the electoral process. So we hope to continue to work with the security agencies to address this matter. Vote buying is an offense under the law, and we must apprehend and set an example of how not to behave on election day.
British Prime Minister Mrs. Theresa May was in Nigeria within the week. She had bilateral talks with President Muhammadu Buhari, and the outcome was a signing of agreements to boost security and economy between them.
I'm delighted to be able to be here in Abuja and to be able to continue the very good discussions we had when you were in London in April. And as you say, we already have very good cooperation between the UK and Nigeria across a range of issues: defence, security, trade, relations. And we, of course, will also be looking to work together to step up our work on shared security threats, be it threats from Boko Haram or human trafficking, a subject on which you and I have spoken previously. And, of course, also cooperate on tackling corruption and lifting people out of poverty.
We'd like to emphasize the expenses taken by the British government about moving the Commonwealth burial for people that participated in World War I and World War II. We are very grateful for that. And as you mentioned, the problem of trafficking of persons and problem of trafficking and climate change, the effect on climate change on Lake Chad.
The ruling All Progressives Congress has finally put to rest questions over the procedure to be adopted by the party in selecting its candidates for the 2019 general elections. The party has approved the use of direct primary to choose its presidential candidate. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukul Buratai, have confirmed that some officers of the Nigerian military have been arrested and court-martialed for leaking information on the operation against the Boko Haram sect. He said this at an interactive session with the media at the Army headquarters.
Well, suffice to say that the Nigerian Army, just like any other institution, we have our own bad eggs, but the beauty of it is that we are not resting on our oars. We continue to identify them and we deal with them accordingly.
The federal government wants member states of the Lake Chad Basin Commission to commit to the implementation of the stabilization efforts in the region. The Minister of Water Resources said this at the closing of a 4-day meeting of member states, where they adopted a strategy to stabilize the region.
The overall success of these collective efforts will be determined by the long-term implementation of the stabilization initiatives with the continuous commitment of all actors in a coherent manner and to reinforce the key guiding principles of ownership of the strategy by member states. It is therefore crucial to ensure that stabilization efforts are anchored on a clearly thought-out strategy that reflects the community, national, and regional aspirations. It is also important to co-opt other initiatives, including the platform for the Lake Chad Basin Governors Forum on Peace Building, Prevention and Stabilization and Regional Cooperation. This platform was established to ensure political endorsement for the development and launching of a common regional approach to stabilization and to commit the concerned authorities at the state and regional levels to the generation of relevant policies and programs geared towards the short, medium, and long-term stabilization and development of the Lake Chad Basin.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel was in Nigeria within the week. During the bilateral talks, President Muhammadu Buhari did not spare Nigerians who seek to enter Europe through illegal means, insisting that his administration does not condone the act.
We are not, as an administration, agreeing for Nigerians to defy the desert, Sahara Desert, and the Mediterranean because they feel that there are greener pastures there, whether they are prepared for it or not. We do not support anything illegal and indisciplined.
We will continue to impress upon people how dangerous it is for them to leave their own country through these dangerous pathways. They are putting their own lives at risk. Many of the stories they are being told about Germany or about Europe are not a true reflection of the situation on the ground.
Meanwhile, Nigeria and Germany have signed 2 memoranda of understanding in agriculture and commerce. Speaking after the signing ceremony, the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Mr. Okechukwu Enelama, said the agreement would increase collaboration between Nigeria and Germany in the 2 areas.
One was on sort of agricultural equipment and capacity building in the agriculture sector, with basically a German company and Nassau that will provide, the company is called Pitkus, that will provide the agricultural equipment and capacity building for our farmers. A second agreement was between Nasima and a company called African Veren, which is more on, again, capacity building and creating better relations between our 2 countries in terms of trade and in terms of investment.